Welcome back, you guys. This is your second stimulus check update and second stimulus package update for Thursday, September 24th. Happy Thursday, you guys. Lots to cover today. We've got really good news from Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, as well as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. They have actually, believe it or not, decided to restart the talks with regard to the stimulus negotiations. They've been pretty much quiet over the last several weeks, but they've actually been in communication with each other multiple times. I'm going to give you guys an update on what was discussed and what progress has been made with that. Also, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer actually said that he wants to push forth a vote on the multi-trillion-dollar stimulus relief bill in the coming days. In fact, he actually said within the next 10 days, he wants to go ahead and push this out. I'm going to give you guys the details on that, but I will let you know that there is a stimulus check in that package. Also, how would you like to have $1,000 per week, or actually $1,000 bi-weekly or twice a month in order to spend, and you actually had to spend the money? Well, this is actually what the requirement would be based on this particular proposal that I'm going to share with you guys later on in this video. This is a stimulus proposal. Anyway, a lot of you guys commented on my video yesterday where I mentioned that a $50 weekly investment invested from the age of 30 to the age of 60 would actually turn into a $470,000 account balance, and would also be generating about $40,000 per year in interest. And you guys were asking, well, where can I invest $50 per week? And so a lot of you guys have commented and asked, well, Ron, where can I go to make a $50 investment, right? Well, guys, there are actually a number of different brokerages that you could actually use to make that happen. I personally happen to like M1 Finance. And the reason being is, a lot of the stocks that, we've heard of that we like, maybe Amazon is like $1,200 a share, or Google is like $1,000 a share. Berkshire Hathaway, that's like $200 and something thousand per share. That's like the price of a house, right? So it's like, with $50, you can buy any of these stocks, but with M1 Finance, you could actually buy fractional shares. So you could actually get a piece of these very expensive stocks for a fraction of the price, or actually multiple stocks for only $50. So anyway, I happen to like M1 Finance. I'll drop a link in the description if you guys are interested in that. But anyway, on with the content. Earlier today, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said that he and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have agreed to restart the negotiations over the next stimulus relief package. He said that I've probably spoken to Speaker Pelosi 15 or 20 times in the last few days on the CR. And when he said the CR, he's referring to the continuing resolution to extend government funding. And we've agreed to continue to have discussions about the CARES Act. Nancy Pelosi also said earlier today that she's expecting negotiations with the White House to resume shortly. She said we'll be hopefully soon to the table with them. Now, there's a lot of good news here that I want to quickly unpack with you. Now, earlier this week, the House actually passed a bill which ultimately prevented a government shutdown. Now, in order to be able to kind of get some of the terms together, Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin have had quite a bit of conversation back and forth in order to properly structure that to give it the best opportunity to pass in the Senate. Now, during that, and this is kind of what I was hoping, but during that kind of opened up the conversation dialogue between Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Now, a lot of you guys are probably wondering, well, why are they talking about the CARES Act? The CARES Act was passed back in March. What the heck does that have to do with us right now, right? We need stimulus checks and stimulus money as of today. Well, if you guys remember, President Trump actually brought up the fact that there was about $300 billion in unused pre-allocated stimulus money that he essentially wanted to redirect and send that money to the American people in the form of stimulus checks. Now, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but this is the only thing that I could possibly think of as for why they would possibly need to be discussing a CARES Act since it was already passed in March. I think it's really interesting to watch this whole thing play out because it's almost like a married couple. You've got the Democrats and the Republicans. The Democrats are kind of like maybe it's the wife, for example. So the wife wants to spend money. She wants to buy all this different stuff, all these different things. And then the husband might be the Republican, and the Republicans are kind of like very conservative. They're trying to save money wherever possible. And ultimately, they both have the same goal, which is to help out the people. They want to improve the health of the economy, but how they approach it is definitely going to be different. Now, then you have President Trump, who is a Republican president. However, he doesn't seem to be traditionally Republican. Like, if we look at how he's viewing this next round of stimulus packages, he's very much so in support of another round of stimulus checks and he's actually willing to spend more than the general consensus within the Senate Republicans. And so while he's a Republican president, it definitely does seem like he does have some similar views as the Democrats. Now, Steve Mnuchin, who is one of President Trump's lead negotiators, have urged the Democrats to come back to the negotiation table for this next round of stimulus packages. In fact, he urged Democrats to come back to the table for a bill built around areas of wide bipartisan agreement, such as revamping the Paycheck Protection Program to aid small businesses and relief payments. He also said, let's pass things that we agree on quickly, and we can always come back and do more. He said it's less of the issue of what the absolute number is. Now, I don't know if they're watching my YouTube videos, and hopefully they are, and hopefully they're hitting that like button just like I know you guys are, but I've said this a number of times. There are multiple line items that both the House and the Senate agree on. Why don't we just pass these line items where there is agreements and, get the money out to the American people? Stimulus checks, reinstate unemployment insurance benefits, extend the evictions moratorium for renters, provide mortgage assistance for those homeowners who are struggling during this time. I mean, there's a number of different line items where there's agreement. Why don't we just take care of those line items? And here's another thing. Elections are right around the corner. Maybe this ends up happening. Maybe they just put together a small, skinny package where it's just these 4 items that there's bipartisan agreement on. It makes the American people happy, it helps out the American people, and it helps their ability to garner additional votes. Let's just see what happens. Now, obviously, we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But based on what Steve Mnuchin is saying, he said, let's pass what we can agree on now and come back for the rest later. It sounds like they may actually be strongly considering this. Now, the presidential elections are about a month and a half away, but it's not just the president that's up for election. You've got 435 members within the House of Representatives. A large portion of that amount is Democrats. Now, many of these Democrats in the House are incredibly anxious and concerned about their ability to be reelected. Recently, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said he's hoping for an 11th hour bipartisan deal on another round of emergency stimulus, something that can pass the Republican-controlled Senate and win the President Trump's signature. Now, Steny Hoyer is actually the second-ranking House Democrat. So you've got Nancy Pelosi, and then just below her, you've got Steny Hoyer. And he's actually pushing for a multi-trillion-dollar stimulus relief bill in the next coming days. He said that the strategy would not only increase the pressure on Senate GOP leaders to address the widespread health and economic devastation caused by the deadly pandemic, but it would also help Democrats, particularly the most vulnerable moderates in tough races, boost their cases that Republicans have failed to respond to the ongoing crisis at the expense of the constituents. So basically what he's saying is, let's just hurry up and get this multi-trillion-dollar bill passed. That way it looks like the House and the Democrats, they did their job. And if it sits on the Senate's desk unapproved, then the blame falls on them. And it kind of takes a lot of pressure off of many of these vulnerable Democrats that are in the House of Representatives that are up for re-election. So that's what his plan is. He said, I think we ought to take up this legislation before we leave here, and I don't think we ought to wait. People are really hurting. Now, let's be honest, guys, with 435 people in the House of Representatives up for re-election, some of these people are going to be losing their seats. There's going to be some musical chairs going on in there. And so some of those Democrats are strongly weighing the idea of possibly endorsing this long shot Republican gambit just to be able to kind of say that they've signed off on something for the American people. However, Hoyer just said yesterday he warned his troops against signing this particular petition, saying that it would simply undermine the Democrats' negotiating strength. Instead, he's suggesting that those lawmakers join him in calling for a stimulus vote within the next 10 days. Now, based on what Steny Hoyer is saying, I can tell that he's a little bit concerned himself. He said, I would hope no Democrat would sign a discharge petition which turns over control of the House floor to the other party, the minority party. But what I hope they do is urge that we pass a bill which reflects. Perhaps it means a substantial reduction in what we thought was necessary, but nevertheless, dealing with all of the issues that are critical if we're going to confront this virus and building the economy. Now, keep in mind, these are some critical words that he just dropped here. This is the guy who's literally just below Nancy Pelosi in the organizational chart here, right? What I get from this is that he's willing to drop this number from $2.2 trillion to whatever it's going to take to get a stimulus package passed and get stimulus checks out to the American people, as well as whatever they deem to be critical. And as far as the Democratic standpoint has been concerned, they've all been about the people. They've been a lot less about the businesses. It's more about the people. So what's critical to them is stimulus checks and unemployment, money for state and local governments. So what's critical for them has been stimulus checks, unemployment, money for food, money for some states and for some local governments. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty encouraged about this new vibe, this open communication between Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin, and the recent updates that we're seeing from Steny Hoyer. And the last thing I want to cover with you guys is this recent proposal from Mark Cuban. He was in the news saying that every household, regardless of income level, should receive a $1,000 stimulus check every 2 weeks for the next 2 months. And the only stipulation that I read in this proposal that he's discussing is that that money has to be spent every time you receive it, meaning there's no saving it. You actually have to spend it in order to get the next stimulus check. So it's really promoting the spending of the money that is received from the stimulus check, putting it out back into the economy. And what's going to happen, you know, if you were a household who received $1,000 every 2 weeks and you knew you had to spend this money in order to get your next $1,000, what are you going to do? You're going to spend it, right? Well, where are you going to spend it? You're going to spend it on businesses. So anyway, this would end up being a $2,000 monthly stimulus total check amount. This would be a $2,000 stimulus check every single month if this were to pass. Now, this is pretty much in alignment with Kamala Harris's previous proposal. But anyway, I think that that would be pretty cool if that were to happen. I don't personally see this happening, but I did want to share it with you guys because it was in the news and, you know, it's relevant to us. So anyway, guys, that's all for this stimulus check update and stimulus package update. Really hope you guys got some value out of this. If you got value out of this video, do me a favor and smash that like button. And if you have any questions for me about the Financial Freedom Program coming out soon, I'd love to hear from you guys. Investing, credit related questions, how to increase your income. I'd love to hear from you guys. Just drop me a comment down below and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.